So, we're seconds away from 10 o'clock and the exit poll, a first indication of how the night might unfold. More than 20,000 people took part on behalf of the BBC, ITV News and Sky in this first July election since 1945. 326 seats are needed to win. So, here we go.
And as Big Ben strikes 10, the exit poll is predicting a Labour landslide.
Sir Keir Starmer will become Prime Minister with a majority of around 170 seats.
The exit poll predicts that Labour will have captured 410 seats, adding 209. It suggests the Conservatives will have lost 241 MPs, landing on 131.
On to the other numbers. The Liberal Democrats up 53 on 61 seats. Reform on 13 seats. The SNP down 38 seats. According to this exit poll, on 10. Plaid Cymru are on 4, they're up 2. And the Greens are up 1 on 2.
All the pointers tonight are that Sir Keir Starmer is taking Labour back to power. Only the 5th Labour leader to win a general election. These are the first indications of what may unfold, but a moment of history beckons. Chris.
Blimey, just take a look and take in those numbers. The Conservative Party, so often an election-winning machine, looks pulverised tonight, taking in those numbers. At the last general election, it was Labour that was pulverised, reduced to its smallest number of seats since 1935. At the time, there was talk that Boris Johnson might serve as Prime Minister into the 2030s, and that for Labour to win by just a smidgen would require a Himalayan climb on their part. And yet you look at those numbers and they have won by a mile. What does this tell you? It tells us a lot about voter volatility. Like never before, more people in more places, more often, are more willing to change their minds about who they support from one election to another. That's why it looks like we went from a landslide last time for the Conservatives to a landslide for Labour this time. It is going to be quite the night.
Was it?
And Chris.
Well, the exact numbers may change as the night goes on, but we can be pretty confident that what it will do is give an indication of what the pattern and the flow of results and the actual outcome of the night is going to be. So is it going to be the case that Labour are returned to power on a historic swing, or alternatively, maybe the polls have been wrong and the Conservatives could, for the first time ever, form a government after five successive general elections?
OK, well, you're looking at Big Ben now, and we are in these final seconds when everyone in the whole country, frankly, is waiting with bated breath to work out what may lie in store. Rishi Sunak called this election desperately hoping that he would be able to get a majority, and has he got it? The exit poll is here. It is predicting a Labour landslide, a Labour majority of 170. It has the Conservatives on 131 seats and Labour on 410. The Lib Dems are projected to win 61 seats, Reform on 13, with the SNP expected to secure 10. That is a simply astonishing result, record-breaking, history-making. The Tories did have, they've dropped to the lowest number of seats since 1832. I think looking at that number, that is an astonishingly low figure. Just to capture for a moment the scale of Labour's achievement, they've taken a Tory majority of notionally over 90 according to boundary changes, and we've gone in a huge swing in the other direction, potentially to a Labour majority, if this exit poll is right, of 170. The SNP has had a poor night. The Lib Dems look like they've had a very good night, and Reform has come out of nowhere, really, only coming to stand in this election, standing in most seats unexpectedly. Clearly, Rishi Sunak didn't think that was going to happen, and yet that has really clearly had a huge impact. Let's get an immediate reaction. Ed, perhaps I should start with you. This is an astonishing light. Keir Starmer must be literally perhaps they're going to need to scrape him off the ceiling, because this is quite some result.
Look, it is Labour's biggest and best election victory ever, delivered by Keir Starmer. It's fantastic for Labour. It's off the scale. I think it's way beyond their expectations. They weren't expecting this to happen. To get to a majority of one, they had to have the same swing as Tony Blair in 1997, and it looks like this could be a majority approaching the kind of majority that Tony Blair achieved in 1997, which was 179. That is, to turn that round from 2019 is just a huge victory for Keir Starmer, and I think it will mean also for the Conservatives.
We can reveal it is a Labour landslide being predicted by the exit poll. The catastrophe for the Conservatives. Keir Starmer becomes the 7th Labour Prime Minister in history.
So, a Labour landslide. This is your voice. This is our country deciding we've had enough. If the exit polls are right, this is a moment of radical, generational change. Keir Starmer will become the first person to lead Labour from opposition to government in 27 years. And that, for many of our viewers tonight, will be a virtual, maybe an actual lifetime.
So we're trying to
bring you those numbers and the breakdown as we just digest that and look at the faces of some of our guests around the table and indeed in the audience now. And we will tell you exactly what the party has. We are hearing that Labour has got 410 seats. Conservatives are on 131.
Oh, wow.
The Lib Dems are on 61 seats. The Reform Party are on 13.
That's extraordinary.
An extraordinary number for a new party. The SNP is on
SNP disaster
10 seats. So we will remind you of those numbers now as we're getting them up on the screen for you. Labour on 410. Conservatives on 131. The Lib Dems have beaten their best record, 61. Reform, an outstanding result for a brand new party, 13 seats tonight. And the SNP has been absolutely devastated with a result that leaves them with just 10 seats.
So correct me if my maths is wrong, but I think that's a Labour majority of 170. And that is very comparable to 1997.
It's a bit less. Yeah, a bit less than 97. It's not as good as 97.
It's just a little bit under where
poll shows Labour on 410 seats, the Conservatives on just 131, the Liberal Democrats on 61. The Reform Party will be delighted with their result of 13 seats, the SNP 10, an expected drubbing for the SNP in Scotland, Plaid Cymru 4, and the Green Party 2 seats, so an additional seat from the one it had for years with Caroline Lucas. I mean, we've been expecting this landslide, but quite those figures extraordinary.
This is an extraordinary evening. There are not many times when the entire country, as it were, turns its back and chooses a new direction. This is going to be an evening remembered for 100 years. It is not the destruction of the Conservative Party some people have been talking about. They have survived a bit, but it is an astonishing moment. It's bigger than any of the great turns that I can remember in my lifetime.
And although that landslide that was expected has clearly happened, there is still some moving parts here, not just tonight, but for what that reform vote in particular means for the right in our country.
Absolutely. I think we should all be looking at the reform vote. Perhaps 5 million, 6 million of our fellow citizens voting for reform, and many more MPs for reform at Nigel Farage's back than we had expected. I think it's going to be a very, very uncertain evening. I think a lot of counts are going to be within a few hundred votes, really knife-edge contests. So you've got to keep listening, you've got to keep watching, because there's going to be a lot of thrills, spills, surprises and unexpected tumblings down.
Absolutely.
Ahead.
And we're here till 5 o'clock in the morning, holding your hand throughout it all. We'll speak to you later on the usual numbers, 0345 6060 973. But with us here in the studio and helping to guide us through the night are the news agents, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall, bringing us their insight and analysis as all the results come in. And John, you have covered a few of these. What do you take from from this projection? I mean, Labour from shattered to triumph and the opposite for the Conservatives.
I'm going to try and sound not too breathless, frankly, because these numbers are astonishing as you look down and go through them. From where Labour were in 2019 to this today seemed absolutely unimaginable. If you want to talk the language of geology, this is an earthquake, this is a tsunami, this is tectonic plates shifting. And for the Conservative Party, an absolute catastrophe when people were talking in 2019 about the Conservatives and Boris Johnson being there for a generation. And in my lifetime, I mean, there were the landslide wins for Labour in 1966. There was Thatcher's landslide in 83. There was Tony Blair's in 97, arguably Johnson in 2019. This is bigger than all of that. I mean, the scale of the victory is huge. And just, you know, look, there's still going to be uncertainty.
Oh. Whoa. Oh my God.
You can see Ruth's face in just a second. You can see how Andy has reacted.
Brilliant.
A Labour landslide and then some. Conservatives on 131 seats. Labour 410 seats. The Lib Dems on 61 seats. What a campaign he has had. Ed Davey, as I was saying to the team just yesterday, his midlife crisis coinciding with this election campaign, and it looks like he's potentially secured 61 seats for his party. As far as the SNP is concerned, I don't know how you describe it in Scotland, but we'd say in Lancashire, it looks as though they've been absolutely battered. And look at the numbers for reform, potentially up to 13 seats. Wow. That's where some of the Conservative votes from last time were.
Oh my God.
You can see Ruth's face in just a second. You can see how Andy has reacted.
Brilliant.
There's no dressing this up. This is a massacre. It is a massacre. They've actually, if this is right, pulled a few back from where they thought they were. They've pulled a good few dozen back from where they thought they were, because there was 80 that we thought we had, with another possible 40 to 60 in play.
Based on asking people who, coming out of polling stations, just having voted up and down the country, what they actually did. They're asked to fill in a duplicate piece of paper and put it in a box which can then be tallied up to give us what should be an accurate result within a few seats. So, it is 10 o'clock. Voting has ended in this snap election called by Rishi Sunak just 43 days ago, and we will soon be able to reveal that it is a Labour landslide being predicted by the exit poll. The catastrophe for the Conservatives. Keir Starmer becomes the 7th Labour Prime Minister in history.
So, Labour landslide. This is your voice. This is our country deciding we've had enough. If the exit polls are right, this is a moment of radical, generational change. Keir Starmer will become the first person to lead Labour from opposition to government in 27 years. And that, for many of our viewers tonight, will be a virtual, maybe an actual lifetime. So we're trying to bring you those numbers and the breakdown as we just digest that and look at the faces of some of our guests around the table and indeed in the audience now. And we will tell you exactly what the party has. We are hearing that Labour has got 410 seats. Conservatives are on 131. The Lib Dems are on 61 seats. The Reform Party are on 13.
That's extraordinary.
An extraordinary number for a new party. The SNP is on
SNP
10
disaster.
seats. So we will remind you of those numbers now as we're getting them up on the screen for you. Labour on 410, Conservatives on 131. The Lib Dems have beaten their best record, 61. Reform, an outstanding result for a brand new party, 13 seats tonight. And the SNP has been absolutely devastated with a result that leaves them with just 10 seats.
So correct me if my maths is wrong, but I think that's a Labour majority of 170. And that is very comparable to 1997. When you think about it, 5 years ago, when people had the chance to vote, they were not to the hundreds of